we go. All right, I think we're recording. Link to the meeting. Cool. Okay, thanks for joining the third FN project community meeting. This meeting is being recorded and will be posted to YouTube. We will try and keep it to 45 minutes, no longer. That way we respect everyone's time. I know it's late. Further away you get from the US, unless you're going to Hawaii, then it's earlier. So attendees, go ahead and put your name. So the document is posted in the meetings room. So the agenda every week is posted, or the agenda every other week is posted there. Comcall.fnproject.io. So yeah, just go ahead and throw all your names in, and I will accept them. I'll start by putting the ones I see here: Dennis, Reed, Sean, Tolga, and I think there's a few. Sorry if I overrode everybody. Michael, and it looks like we have a couple new members. So if you want, go ahead and throw your names into the attendees, just so that we know on an ongoing basis that you've been attending the meetings. For those that are new to the meetings, this is the third one. They're pretty straightforward. We do them every other week for 45 minutes. We do a Zoom call. The meeting notes are all posted to the document here. And the etiquette is pretty straightforward. Talk whenever you want. There's not a whole lot of people. It's probably 10 people today. So feel free to just talk whenever you want. Mostly it's to introduce any new community members that would like to open up and introduce themselves, talk about use cases, but go through PRs, roadmap issues, that sort of stuff. So basic kind of open source blocking and tackling. So thanks for joining. We also have a Slack room, #meetings in the FN Project open source Slack. And I think that's just about everything. Okay, so during the introduction, I went over the etiquette. The purpose of the meeting is basically just to go over the open source project and make sure it's moving forward and keep these going every other week. So would any new members like to introduce themselves? This is a spot to do that.
Hi, I'm Vince. I've just contributing to the FN project because with a bit of the restructuring, I've got a bit of free time on my hands. I work in the office with Rick and some of the guys which work on FN. I thought I'd try and give them a bit of help with the free time I have.
Cool. Thanks for the UI work, Vince, and welcome to the community calls.
Yeah, no problem. Hopefully I'm more of a help than a hindrance.
Definitely more of a help so far. Thank you.
Hey guys, this is Jason McLaughlin joining. I'm actually Oracle employee starting to work with functions and trying to bring myself up to speed with the project.
Cool. Hey Jason, welcome. All right. Anybody else on the call? I don't think I see any new faces outside of that. So feel free to jump in anytime. Community time. So open community discussion on anything. It's pretty wide open. I will kick it off by simply saying that there were some posts last week. We've got full stack serverless applications written on Deb's SOAP. I think that may have been more than a week ago. Might be a bit older, but I wanted to highlight it since it hasn't been highlighted yet. Also, FN and Gradle. I think, Ivan, you might be on the call. Thanks for sharing that with some folks in your community. Serverless Days Zurich, Dennis, I think you were speaking there, so I wanted to make sure to put a note to that. If the video or materials, Dennis, become available, we should definitely post it to either our YouTube or to Slack.
I'll check those. I'm not sure they are available for now.
Cool. And then there's some work on serverless Kotlin with FN. So all really cool stuff happening in the community. That's what I track in a few different places, mostly through either Twitter or other social channels. Cool. Does somebody want to say something?
Hello?
Hi, welcome.
Do you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Just switch my microphone. So as I was mentioning in my comments, there is Benjamin Mushko. He is kind of expertise in writing Gradle plugins. So I think him about this item. He is not familiar with that project, but he promised to make some review within 2 weeks. So he would have some questions about the if-and project and about the purpose of that repo. So whenever there would be any reasons to deal with implementing Gradle plugins, he is able to offer some help. So if there would be some concrete targets, he can advise something, probably contribute a bit, and so on. So, and for the story with the Kotlin, there is Svetlana Isakova from JetBrains. She is speaking at various conferences. She writes books about Kotlin, and she contributes into the implementation of the language compiler. So indeed, she can propose some specific language features of the language itself. It can be reviewed in the perspective of the serverless. So
Cool.
I think that would be, and the reason why would she contribute into that. So I guess, I have also informed her, no reaction so far, so probably she is busy with other stuff, but if you would share the recorded video, she probably can check out the starting point. So what is required is probably a message to Benjamin about that project, if anybody present in this community call about the FN and Gradle, and that nearly the same, but as for Kotlin and FN, the vision and some global understanding of this, what was the origin of this idea and what are the targets, so they can watch the video and jump in with helping from the starting point. So we require two starting points for that. And what I wanted to add as for my question in a chat during the previous phone call, I was assuming about the support for the .NET languages for implementing functions, and I see some vectors for the .NET Core and for Mono. I know that Microsoft is actively dealing with .NET Core version 3, and which is bleeding edge. And I know that Mono community is pretty active on the implementation of the CLR. So I guess both vectors are valid, and both communities are actively helping on GitHub. So if you need some active, someone would require help, they probably would jump into the appropriate GitHub rooms and share the insight about the idea for the FS project and the role of those .NET Core or Mono for implementing functions. So
sounds good. Okay, I'm gonna have to move the conversation on, Ivan.
And the last thing I wanted to add is that there is another programming language that could be supported within this option. It's the language is called Clojure CLR. So this is the implementation of Clojure for .NET. It is cloud dependent, and it is also possible to assume .NET Core and Mono CLR implementations for such a playground. So that's all.
Okay. Make an introduction to me directly on Slack to any of those folks, because I'd be happy to involve them in the community get them up to speed on where the project is at. I'm happy to connect with them one-on-one just to share with where we're at and what our goals are. Or they can join the community meeting if they have time. But really appreciate you broadcasting. Cool. Okay. Moving on. There are no action items from last week. There were none assigned. I actually assigned a couple to myself just prior to the meeting. This is actually a question for the group. I haven't done too much investigation, but I really need a way to view PRs across the whole organization because we have like 6 or 7 active repos, and it's sort of tedious to go through all the different repos to find the active PRs inside of those. So hopefully there's a way to better organize this. And then the other thing is we need to make a decision maybe today on the call about how we want to organize FDK documentation. I know we've had this conversation like 4 times, and I want to just make sure that we close the loop on that because I have a couple PRs that are, or there's a couple from multiple people who are sitting, and I just had to get those pulled in. So we'll probably address that in the PR section. Did I miss any action items from last week?
Not the action items, but probably an update. Sorry, I didn't have time to put this on the list. So I just want to tell what's going on with the security context I've started in the previous meeting. So for now, if you're going to go to FDK Python and FDK repo, FDK Node.js repos, you're going to see that there are pretty similar PRs that I've started. They all about doing some security testing for our base images. So we use native integration of the Encore. It's a tool similar to Claire, CoreOS Claire. So for now, what we're going to have soon. So we're going to have Docker files of the base images from the FDKs in the FDK repos. And each of the Docker file will be gated for each pull request against Encore in order to identify if there is any fixable issues for the operating system itself. So the Encore will tell us about that. So and hopefully with each merge pull request to an FDK, we will have a new release of images itself. So we're gonna just go and override existing images. No, it's not in FDK Java yet. Just go to FDK Python or FDK Node.
Oh, okay. I thought I actually saw it running earlier, but maybe that was...
No, it's not in Java. I didn't done it yet. Yeah, that yet.
Which one was I just looking at a little while ago?
Yeah, that's gonna be fine.
Okay, I was just gonna show everybody for...
Yeah, this one. Go to checks section. Just
right here.
So here you see that there is a check that actually runs the unit test for FDK, and the rest of those are individual checks for every type of image we use to build functions. So basically, we have a multi-stage images. So and each of those images has to be tested in order to identify whether it has vulnerabilities inside of that.
Cool. Yeah, thanks for setting that up.
Yeah. And I'm going to continue to adding those to other FDKs. But there's another statement that the Reed raised before about which images should we deliver as a community. So for now, almost all our images except Python are based on Alpine. But for some reason, Alpine is not really great operating system for building functions. There are certain problems with Alpine, and particularly with libc that is used by various types of software. But it works fine on Debian, for instance. That's why the Python FDK uses Debian, and native Python image from Docker Hub library, which is like official ones, they also run on top Debian. So we need to basically figure out whether we want to deliver Alpine and Debian, or just stick with the only one operating system, or just have like any recommendation how to build those type of images for people. Because there is one problem that's being raised by automate folks about Node.js FDK images that doesn't have a valid C compiler. And it's probably, it's not confirmed yet, but it's related, it's supposed to be related to a C compiler that is not available in Alpine images, but available in Debian.
I could, this is Greg, I can comment on that if you'd like.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so two of our users are actually having this problem. One is working with Web3, which is libraries for working with Ethereum. And then another one is using Canvas, which is a Node library for rendering images. Each of those require binaries. Each of those has released binaries, but for some reason, when building an Alpine, it doesn't find binaries compatible for that OS. So it falls back to building them, which fails because Alpine does not have a C compiler by default. You have to add it. We actually have added it. So we use the build image parameter in the func.yaml and pointed it to an image we created that included the C compiler. And we were able to compile it. The problem, once we got past that step, we ran into a bunch of issues. The first is that the resulting binaries that it built aren't pulled into the run image. And I am struggling to find a way to do that gracefully. So that's one issue. And by the way, these binaries are put into like who knows where. Finding where each of these things like puts the binaries that it then uses is sort of challenging. But that was a problem with Web3. With Canvas, not only did it require a binary installation, but it also required packages that you need to install using APK, like Cairo is one of them, or libjpeg. And I'm still working through these issues, but it's extremely challenging to get these things kind of working from build all the way through to function run.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Can I comment on that, Greg?
Sure.
So I think you might be easier for you if you don't use the build image or the multi-stage image stuff to get started. I guess that stuff is kind of newer in the greater scheme of Docker things, but it's definitely an optimization. I think you could just have a normal Docker file that builds those things, and the binaries will just be laying there. Your images will be a little larger. And you can move to doing the multi-stage build to get your images smaller later. But just to get something working, I think it'll be much easier if you don't use the multi-stage image stuff.
So so we were just sort of moving to that
Cool.
before I broke to kind of join this meeting. The question there is, I'm not too intimately familiar with the func.yaml options. I have to take a look, but if I create my own Docker file, like how do I actually deploy that resulting image?
Yeah, it looks pretty much the same.
I have a tutorial on Node, building a custom Node image with Docker. It's pretty straightforward.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'll take a look at that.
Under
Who was that?
This is Sean. It's called like Container Function.
What is it called?
The tutorial is called Container Function or Container as Function or something like this. Basically, it's write your own Docker file, right?
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah. Certainly works for now, and for I think the short and medium term. For people, so our customers who were actually building these things were sort of clueless as to what was going on. Maybe they just need to get better understanding of Docker files and how all that stuff works in order to do some advanced stuff. But it took some hand holding.
Going back to Dennis's, I guess, point about Debian or anything else versus Alpine. Alpine is awesome, but it's an advanced use case, right? Like it's really small, but it has muscle for a C library. Doesn't have everything on it. The JVM is currently being ported to Alpine. Like it's actually a port because it's a different C library. So it's maybe it's really cool if you can just toss stuff on there, but maybe we should have a less restricted environment as an option for customers or users.
So that was my question. So, like, how many operating systems how many images we would like to support officially? So, because for now, it's really problematic. It's like almost impossible to run, for instance, Python on Alpine, and specifically with a TensorFlow or any other machine learning framework that uses some C++ and C libraries internal that uses libc, for instance. So there's a basically need to run that on top of the Debian, which is, I would say, even like somewhat recommended for Python, because like if you're gonna do like Docker pool Python, you would get a Debian image by default. So like for certain use cases, Alpine would be enough. And it's true, I agree with you. The size of the images are pretty small. It's acceptable, and this is what we've been doing since Iron functions. But the further we go, the more use cases people trying to adopt with the functions, the more restriction, the more problems we see with operating systems. So as a community, can we support two operating system, let's say Debian and Alpine? So for now, we already do Alpine, but can we also add Debian as official one?
You mean for each of the supported languages in like FN command?
No, not just FN commands, for FDK base images.
Providing base images, yeah, like off-the-shelf base images ready to go.
Yeah.
I'm still in favor, just as a side, I'm still in favor of getting rid of all that runtime generation boilerplate code in the CLI. Like we should just be using an init image, and it's much easier to plug everything in. It's more of an open marketplace that way. That's a side, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, it would be nice to see a proposal or something of what that should look like. I think we have to be at least consistent across all the images, and the base images themselves are really not providing a lot of value. They're just a pointer basically so that we can shove code of different runtimes in there. I mean, most of them are barely a wrapper over just another thing we're pulling off of Docker Hub. So
this is Greg from Automate. I'm not crazy about the idea of putting like the FDK like harness in image, because we're actually starting to extend that in various ways to handle things like so one of the things that we're doing is we call FDK.handle, and if the input JSON has some kind of if it has a _transformer field in the JSON, we actually call another FDK function, which we've added. I'm just concerned that if we start moving things into the base images, that we're going to lose the ability to do that in a way that doesn't also undermine us using other things that the base images do.
Yeah, this is always a confusing conversation because the FDKs and code themselves and the base images are kind of two separate things.
Okay.
So a lot of it is just what's the minimum for the base images. I think the original goal, at least, is what is the minimum amount of things that we can put in a container that is able to run, say, Python code or Ruby code, or et cetera, so that we can shove the code in there and run it as a function, right? But the function interface itself doesn't rely on what's in the base image so much, other than, does it have the language runtime in it, basically, or whatever else the code is going to need.
Okay, that makes sense.
User can add, yeah.
Okay, thanks for clarifying.
So I added a I added an action item in here to think about a proposal for using in and images. I did like the conversation we had really early on in FN's lifetime about how to bring your own base image as opposed to using the set number that we provide, which, like you said, Sean, makes it more of an open marketplace for base images. So it'd be interesting to see what that would look like from a developer experience.
Would be nice for users who doesn't really understand how the FN CLI works and where the Docker files come from that is used to build a function. So we've been talking about a feature that helps you to save the Docker file that is being like hard-coded in pieces into language handlers. So we could actually generate a Docker file which is based on run image and build image that are part of the func.yaml. So we can actually show how.
There was a conversation. There was a conversation started by a topic raised by Matthew Gilliard a while back, and it was basically proposing that we always produce a Docker file because that's the only place people can customize their container environment. And the minus runtime stuff, or if you're using language runtime, it magically generates a Docker file on the fly, then deletes it, right? So it's hard.
Yeah,
and
agreed.
If you move to init image and a Docker file, then there's no need to do anything, and there's no need for any special support. The only special support I would think for languages is to make it easy. I was discussing the idea of having in the FN CLI's config file, just having shortcuts. Like if you say Java, then you mean this init image. If you say Node, you mean this one. And have some defaults that are insensible, and then people just change them. So they can use their own custom personal image or corporate image for when they say init image Java, right? Could mean something.
Yeah, it's a little bit. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, it's a little bit like what the BuildPack project is trying to achieve.
I know.
Yes, take a look at that. It'd be interesting to see. There's some steam behind BuildPack. I think Knative is trying to use it. It comes from Heroku and GitHub.
Yeah, it's Heroku and Cloud Foundry, and honestly, it's fine, except that basically all you're doing is creating a whole new language for defining environments. Yeah. Right?
We could just use Docker files for the same.
Yeah, you can use Docker files to do exactly the same thing.
For pretty much, yeah. I think they're trying to build another abstraction on top of Docker.
Yeah, it is another abstraction. And if you've ever seen a build file and you don't want to add functionality, then you'll know that it's not so straightforward.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like the init image idea. Yeah,
it works now. They work. They're great. They're fine.
Yeah, I think so. It just needs to be some kind of effort to close that whole thing out. I think it was kind of baked, just Java and stuff like that. But yeah.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. And then the good example is the Graal guys wrote an init image, so it made it easier for people to pick up and use Graal.
Right.
And that was their way in, right? They just provided an init image and a runtime and a build image, and it was done.
Yeah. I think it kind of touches on Greg's concern earlier, which is, what do these even look like to start? So I can start modifying these things. You have to go.
That's right. Yeah, it's true, right? So if you have an init image, you can look at what is being generated easily enough and tweak it.
Cool. Okay. I made a note of it, and we should probably start. Maybe what I'll do is take an action item if I don't have a baby here today to create
caveat
conversation. Caveat. I might be gone for a while, but as long as I'm here, I'm doing something. Okay, cool. As far as open issues go and PR, actually, sorry. Is it okay to move on, or does anybody want to say anything on this before I? Okay, cool. Thanks everybody for bringing that up. Moving on to issues and PRs. We don't need to cover each of these because we've got about 12 minutes left. But Vince, awesome work on the UI. I got it mostly working, which is a huge push forward for that. Anything in particular you want to say about that, or should we just keep pushing on?
Yeah, push on. We've only got 12 minutes. Nothing to say around at all anyway. Cool.
Sweet. Nice work on that. We'll keep pushing on it, make sure it's all working. I saw some of your questions in there, so we'll address those. And then, hell, maybe we can actually improve on the UI as opposed to just make it work. So, and then Reed, you've got a couple PRs in there between Reed and Tolga and Rick Cannon and Rich Cannon. Fix sloppiness, unused extensions, craft, add PID limit, which was recent one, the bump the out of memory limit to 120 gigs, and change individual placement warnings. Is there anything in here that you guys want to cover with those issues or with those PRs? I think they're all open still.
Yeah, I think, well, a few of them are pretty straightforward. One is just like the tests don't work unless you turn swappiness off on your dev environment. So it's just kind of fixing that. That's a couple of them there. Cleaning up extension stuff is also just getting rid of unused stuff. I want to clean up and make those xauth and xDNS repos that we have laying around actually work. So I started cleaning those up. I guess the big one that's not on here, I guess, is adding logging back. Right now, like, there's no way to get logs. So I have a PR for adding logs back. They're just going to come out as info logs at FN by default. I guess people that are running FN, like Greg, should probably be aware of this. They're not coming out of there by default, but they're going to start coming out of there by default.
Where are they coming out of?
They're just going to be on FN standard error, and it's going to be container logs. And then there's a configuration environment variable there that you can just turn them off. So if you don't want them, then you just it's in that PR. It's FN disable.
Got it.
User logs. Yeah.
So it comes out of the container on standard error, and then what does FN server do with it? It will write it to like paper trail or whatever, right?
Well, it's going to come out on FN's standard error now. So it's not the container. It's coming out on the container standard error, but we're just going to forward it to FN's standard error. So whatever you're doing with FN's standard error.
I see. So it'll just like, basically it'll, wherever the FN server is writing its logs to, it'll show there.
Yep. So if you don't want them, there's a configuration option to turn it off.
Got it.
You can
so
think about it, I can help you.
Yeah, so that's going to be interesting because we've got, so for our use case, we have, so again, we're using libp2p, which
lost you.
Greg, we lost you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay, cool. So, right, so we're sort of coming up with a way to, we should talk maybe offline about this deeper because we want to ship the logs back to where the function's being run from, if it's being run from the CLI. And we have obviously we're peer-to-peer technology, so doing that is pretty challenging for us, but we're going to need to capture the standard error in the wrapper that we wrote that wraps FN so that we can ship it back to the requester.
Cool. Yeah, I've put a lot of thought into that before. So yeah, ping me and we'll talk about it today if you're around or whenever.
Sure. Might be. Yeah. I'll ping you. We'll figure out how to chat about it either on Slack or we can jump on a call.
Cool. Yeah, I think that would be really useful too. It's just for debugging, that's great. So yeah. I totally agree. But.
Yeah, and it's something like, when you work with the serverless framework and Lambda, right? Like Lambda's logs go to, I think it's CloudWatch, right? And then serverless can kind of pull CloudWatch and return logs.
Yep.
Something akin to that.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. I like that. Okay, a couple older ones. Allow config of invoke URL pattern, run function container as unprivileged user. Those are about 30-ish days old.
Yeah, I mean, the second one is going to happen. It could be interesting, but hopefully it's not interesting. We're just going to start running it functions as a different user.
Okay.
So yeah, if things explode, then could be fun. But
okay, duly noted.
Yeah, number one doesn't. I think I talked Rich out of that. So,
Okay,
yeah.
cool. And then the only other ones in here that I put in here were the documentation PRs that I have in there. Michael, if you're on the call, can we talk about this for just 30 seconds here? So there's two people that care. There's two different types of people who care about the FTK. There's contributors to the FTK, and then there's users of the FTK, aka function developers. The latter group is a majority of the people, probably 99%. Those people should go not to the FTK repo themselves, but they should go to where? Tutorials?
Docs. They should go to, well, let's see. It depends if it's a doc thing or a tutorial thing. But one of those two, yes.
Got it. So are we planning then in your minds to continue putting documentation here? So like each of these repos, we're going to continue to put developer documents in here, developer documentation?
User, right? User documentation.
Say that one more time.
User.
User, yeah, correct.
As compared to the developers, like developer of FTK or developer of a function. So it's the user of FF.
Okay, so then we're going to keep documentation inside the docs repo here. So each of these are going to go here. So for starters, this is super old, like Python. So then the goal then is to take what's in, let's see, FTK Python, take all of this developer-facing documentation and move it here, and then basically get rid of all of this here and just point back to here and or a tutorial. Is that correct?
Anything that's user stuff should go in docs, right? If you're going to use it. If you're going to develop an FTK, then that stuff should stay in the FTK.
Or FTK internals, right? Like how it works, anything about how it works, anything about how to extend it, that obviously belongs in the FTK.
Okay, so then I have a PR that no longer matters because I think I did a few things here, which was I updated all that stuff, and then I guess I was told, shouldn't we just delete it? So then I deleted it all, but now it seems like we're not going to delete those folders.
Right, right. I would just take out, I mean, I would, so we have a landing page, right, for each, or the README for each FTK. So that will live where it is. Right now, what's in docs, so we have a landing page in docs as well, right? So right now, that's just a duplicate of what's in the FTK. So that will go away. We can delete it right now, but we'll still have to have some sort of index page that points to either more docs or more tutorials, depending upon what it is. Does that make sense?
I think so, yes. Okay. Okay.
So like the directories will be the same in docs, but what's in there will be different.
Okay. Okay, well then I'll go back through my PR and see if I can clean it up to be back to what you're thinking. That definitely means we're going to have to go through all of the...
Yeah, like the Python one, Dennis has a lot of stuff in there, so I have to really go through that with him, I think. Some of the other ones are much easier because there's really nothing there, so we're just cleaning it up. But Java is the first one. This is what I'm going to work on next, or working on next.
I see. So learn about the FM project using the Java FTK. Okay, so then this goes back to this page.
Yeah, so that's going to stay, so the landing page. And then if you go in there at all, if you look at the links or the directory structure in the FTK, Java has a bunch of examples and stuff. So that is what's going to get moved over to docs. So if you look at the examples directory, yeah, that stuff needs there's a bunch of stuff in there. I think there's a docs directory as well, which has some good information in it. That's all the stuff that I'd like to get moved over into docs because it's using the FTK rather than building the FTK. I mean, developing. If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. I don't want to belabor the conversation about whether those belong here or not. So I guess let's just centralize it to the docs repo. So then, but if somebody wants to use the FTK Java and they want to, like, let's say pull code, then they're going to have to check out the docs repo and all of the FTK code across all the different languages. Or
if they had, let's see, if they did examples.
Yeah, like let's say you want to do Stringiverse.
Yeah.
And you want to test this, then you're going to go to the docs repo and you're going to click FTK Java, and then you're going to click examples. I guess you could just copy paste from there, but some people like to clone a repo to get all the sample code.
Yeah.
Then you just clone the whole docs repo.
So right now you'd be cloning the docs repo. That would be the current answer.
Okay.
Now, right now, that wouldn't be a big deal.
Yeah.
But, 2 or 3 years from now, that could be a different answer.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, let's just make something happen, because right now things are sort of spread all around. So I'll try and help with that. Hopefully, if I have a few more days here, I want to make sure we get those closed. Cool. Thanks.
But yeah, one last thing on that, Chad. So some of the examples do need updating. So I just want to make sure we get the content right, and then I'm going to move it over.
Cool. Okay.
Or we can move it over and then fix it, but we just need to make sure we do both.
Sounds good. I'll try and help with the structure a little bit, and then I'll let you do your thing.
Okay, thanks.
Sweet. And then just FYI, there's also a bunch of open PRs inside the tutorials repo.
Yeah.
So we should probably go through those and either close them or get them updated or whatnot.
Yeah, I need to do that. They're piling up in there, so we need to. We've got some issues to look at too as well. So
that's cool. It's not all on you. It should be, other people should also help here.
Yeah, but agreed. We need to maybe have some sort of, what would we say, goals for cleaning those things out.
Cool. Okay. I just threw them on here so we can track them. There's, you can only do so much in a day. That's for sure. Sweet. Well, that is a full 46 minutes. Roadmap is basically the same as it's always been. You can take a look at it here. I guess I'm going to try and keep it update based off our conversations, but mostly it's just about stability, documentation, cleanup, triggers, that sort of stuff. So unless there are any last thoughts.
I have one. This is Greg.
Yes.
I opened an issue a while back that's bubbling up a lot for us, and that is the capitalization of app and function names.
Yes.
So I have the link if you want me to. Yeah, you could type it out and I'll add the link to the issue.
Yeah.
But basically, right now, if people, we've created our own CLI because we deal with FN completely differently than the CLI that the FN CLI, and in that we had to kind of make rules that we can't have capitalized letters, and our users are like, well, why? That's my functions have like camel case and stuff, and they don't like underscores because it's hard to type. And then if they don't put underscores, everything gets lowercase, which is very hard to read. Mm-hmm. So just something to kind of bubble up to the top there. I know that there's issues between function names having capital letters and Docker images not allowing capital letters. But if we can kind of think about it, we would be very appreciative.
Okay. Yeah. Throw a link in there. I think I know where it's at, but
yeah,
we'll start tracking that and see if there's some kind of a resolution we can bring to it.
Cool.
Okay. Thanks again, everybody, for joining. This call will be recorded and posted just for continuity, and we'll see you in a couple weeks. Probably not me, but somebody else will run it.
Hey, thanks.
All right, everybody. Thank you for joining.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.